On Independence Square right behind me, perhaps you can see there are several thousand protesters. A stage has been set up. A city is perhaps stretching it a little bit, but there certainly have been tents installed here on Independence Square to make sure there's a permanent presence of the demonstration. There's also a sort of revolutionary headquarters, if you like, in a building on the side of the square where there's even a press centre. So things are getting organised. What's quite important to note about this revolution, as the Ukrainians are calling it, in comparison with the Orange Revolution that took place in 2004, is that this really started from a grassroots movement, a spontaneous reaction to the government's decision not to sign this association agreement with the European Union. So it's only now that sort of the different forces that are involved in organising it are coming together, and with some tensions, but also with a great deal of goodwill and energetic spirit, sort of coming together and making some plans for what to do going forward. But it's still very not clear what exactly the plan is.
Gulliver, what about the demonstrators? We saw yesterday already that they're a bit of a mixed bunch.
Well, I think yesterday actions by a certain group of violent demonstrators were a big disappointment to the vast mass of Ukrainians who protested completely peacefully. But it's true that in Ukraine the opposition is now formed of three main parties, and one of them is a party called Svoboda, which is allied with the French National Front and with other far-right parties in Europe. It's not quite the same as those far-right parties, but it is kind of in that sphere generally. And I think what we saw yesterday is that some members of Svoboda and then people sort of further to the right of them, nationalist groups, were actually keen to use violence in this demonstration. In Ukraine, there's a funny situation, paradoxical perhaps to Western Europeans, that very extreme nationalists in Ukraine can also be very extreme pro-Europeans simply because they are so opposed to Russia's domination of this country.